Welcome back to the WHHI News. Guess what? A new law has passed. It's the constitutional carry law. If you're 18 years old, right, Duffie Stone, 14th Circuit Solicitor, you can walk in and buy a gun.
That not only can you walk in and buy one, you can carry it with you wherever you
I don't
go.
need
with
training.
some restriction.
I don't need training.
No training required. No concealed weapons permit required any longer, which was something that had been in effect for a long time. The law went into effect March the 7th upon the governor's signature. So that law actually, there was no lead time there. It was immediately going into effect then.
And some other changes too. If I have a gun in my car and the police stop me but have no reason to ask, do you have a gun in your car or your glove or anywhere? They can't do that.
Well, they can ask if you have a gun, but they don't have to ask. They cannot ask you if you've got a concealed weapons permit because you don't need one.
You don't
anymore.
need that anymore.
I think probably more importantly, cars now there are no restrictions, whereas in the past there'd been restrictions of where you could keep the gun inside your car. That's gone now. There are no restrictions for carrying the gun. There's no restrictions of carrying it on your person, whether concealed or otherwise. So if you're 18 years of age and you're not a convicted felon, you can carry, and it applies only to handguns, but you can carry a handgun.
Well, what about this, though? This blows my mind. A possession of a firearm alone is not a reason to stop a vehicle,
right.
There's more there. Law enforcement officers can't conduct a stop solely because a firearm is visible.
That's correct. And they can't stop a car, they can't stop a person, even if they see somebody walking down the street with a gun, carrying a handgun. They can't stop them. And
legislators heard a lot from law enforcement that were opposed to this, but it didn't work, obviously.
They did. They had, there was a good bit of pushback from law enforcement throughout the state. In fact, the sheriff of Columbia, I think, was quoted in the paper, and I actually spoke to him last week about this. He said on March the 8th, he woke up and said a small prayer that we haven't returned to the Wild West. So there was some pushback. I will say this, though, and the people need to understand this. A lot of restrictions that were in place before are still in place. You cannot take the gun into a place where there are medical procedures taking place. You can't take it into
like a
schools.
Court,
you can't
schools,
take it
hospitals.
into, well, the interesting thing about that is you can't take it into a courthouse while court is in session. But we still have a number, and then there's also a restriction that says you can't take it into a public building. So there are some ambiguities in that.
There are, and here's the question from me. Someone could come into where I go grocery shopping. I'm old, I say grocery store. Grocery shopping or, purchasing gifts or something in a department store. They can be carrying a gun now.
Absolutely. I was in a restaurant this weekend and saw a guy come in. Now, there's some exception to that, though. Number one, if the business posts that handguns are not allowed, then they have to, and there's a certain size of the sign that they have to post. But if it's posted, as in previous years, you're still restricted from that. You can't take.
So they can call law enforcement and say they brought a gun in and we have a posting that says they can't.
That's right.
Okay, let's get to this other issue. You said not the good parts of the bill, you didn't put it that way, but how have other things changed as far as felons having guns?
Well, that is actually, it is a good part of this bill. It's something that solicitors have been pushing for many years. Is in South Carolina, what most people would think of is that felons cannot possess handguns. That's not been the case. They have a convicted felon has to be convicted of a certain crime, and there are a lot of felonies that don't fit.
Felony, rather.
This new law says every felony.
Okay.
If you've been convicted of a felony, you cannot handle a gun. And something else it puts in there, which is something that the solicitors have been pushing for a long time, were graduated penalties. First offense is 0 to 5 years in prison. Second offense is a minimum of 5 years and up to 20, and then the next one, third offense, is 10 to 30. So there's some substantial penalties with that.
Okay, quickly, because we're almost out of time. But you have had cases based on, before this law was enacted.
Yes.
How many cases? What are you going to do? Do
Well
you
over
operate
700.
under the new law, or do you do it under the old law?
Well over 700. And so what I'm having now is I'm having my more experienced prosecutors go through each and every one of those cases, look at the underlying conduct. If the underlying conduct is, for instance, if somebody didn't have a concealed weapons permit, but they took the gun into a school, it's still against the law. So that's something we're still going to prosecute.
So you've got to go through every single case.
I've got to go through every single case and check
I got to cut you off here already. But thanks for explaining this to us.
Thanks.
All right. We'll be
Thanks
right
for
back.
having me.